So we're standing next to the site of the Thomas Passenger Railroad Station. This was a station that serves several different functions. Passengers came and went from town here. Mail would arrive here, and high priority freight of various kinds, particularly that which came in small batches, would arrive at this station as well. And the building that stood on this site when railroad service ceased here was the second of two stations. I should say when passenger service ceased, was the second of two stations on this site. Originally, when the West Virginia Central and Pittsburgh Railroad came to town, they built a wooden frame station in the 1880s. And when the Western Maryland Railway bought the West Virginia Central in Pittsburgh, it did so because it was in the midst of a fairly significant expansion. A railroad baron, a railroad financier by the name of George Gould, who was the son of his more famous father, Jay Gould, purchased the Western Maryland as part of a plan to build a transcontinental railroad system to compete with some of the bigger railroad companies in the East. And he purchased the West Virginia Central in Pittsburgh with the intention of helping to fund that expansion through the revenue that he could earn hauling coal out of West Virginia. But once the railroad came under Western Maryland ownership, there were some improvements that were invested in, and a new station was one of those investments. So on the photograph at left, you can see the smaller wooden frame station that was built by West Virginia Central in Pittsburgh. This shows the first train leaving Thomas. The second photograph, which dates to the 1950s, shows a local freight train paused here at the later brick building that was built under Western Maryland ownership. And the placement of this station was a little bit unique. It was more common than not for a railroad to build its passenger train station right next to downtown for a variety of reasons, so that passengers could get off, and if they were just in town, they could walk right to the nearest hotel. In the days when not everybody owned an automobile or even a horse and carriage or other transportation, it made it easy for people to get from the station to wherever they were going. But the railroad yard in which coal cars were sorted for shipment to market was right in front of downtown, occupying most of the usable land between the storefronts and the river, and the mine complex, the large industrial complex that formed the center of the extensive mining operation in Thomas, occupied the land just this side of that. But the station was placed so that it could be equidistant between the downtown of Thomas and Coketon, at least the closest parts of Coketon, where the Buxton and Main Street store were. This placement made it easily accessible to the industrial works, and it was also right at the junction where the track that ran over to Davis came in and joined up with the main line in the railroad yard here in Thomas. So it's placed right at that junction here. You can see in this photograph there's a bridge going across. This is the track going to Davis, and there's a bridge, a footbridge crossing that track to allow pedestrians to get from the station into town, into Thomas. But because it's right here out of the way of the railroad yard and the industrial complex behind it here, the station is right. I'm going to turn here so that the camera can kind of see what I'm talking about. Behind me is the bridge that carried the main line down to Blackwater Canyon. Crosses the North Fork of the Blackwater, so the river is just below here. And you can see what's left of the station here is a stone retaining wall. And so the station and its platform were built on top of this retaining wall, actually cantilevered out to occupy the minimum amount of land here, because all of the land in this direction was occupied by railroad yard and industrial functions. So very unique placement for this building. couple of interesting historical aspects to it. It was expanded at least once over the years. It received tornado damage in the 1940s that was fairly extensive, but was rebuilt. And passenger trains operated here in Thomas until the mid-1950s. There was a passenger train in each direction from Cumberland, Maryland, which connected to a train to Baltimore. It was actually the same equipment. You could have stayed in the same coach from Baltimore all the way to Thomas. And the train ran to Elkins and then back to Baltimore. And what that enabled was you could get a surprising amount of things that you might not expect to find here in the mountains in the early to mid 20th century. It was possible to, for example, get fresh seafood caught perhaps that morning, perhaps the day before, but shipped on ice in the baggage car at the passenger train, which was expected to travel at higher rates of speed. And so that kind of merchandise, that kind of shipping, kind of made this community a little bit more accessible than a person might expect at times. And it was used to facilitate mobility for the people that lived here. It was a single coach and a mail car, but it served an important transportation function for people who wanted to shop in other communities, who wanted to travel to the outside world, perhaps to visit relatives or whatever their business might be, to bring traveling salesmen to town for the latest gadgets, whatever you name it.